I'll be honest, I've always had this question. I've always wondered, why do you act like that throughout high school and everything like that? It's just always been a question in my mind. And when I first got to college, I actually had no interest in psych whatsoever. I took the intro class and basically just fell in love. I found my answer of why people act like that, and I've learned to transform that answer into what happened to you. What's going on with you? What are the physical reactions going on in your brain, in your body, and stuff like that?
Bold ideas, inspiring stories, dynamic experiences. I'm your host, Dr. John Anderson, President of PennWest. Welcome to the Power of PennWest podcast. What drives someone to dedicate their life to understanding the human mind or help others heal and grow? In this episode, we are going to explore the powerful intersection of science and compassion through the stories of students and faculty in psychology and neuroscience. Today, you'll hear why they chose these fields, what fuels their curiosity about thought, emotion, and behavior, and how they're preparing to support future generations through research, therapy, advocacy, and education. From classroom insights to real-world impact, this episode reveals how the study of the human experience is both deeply personal and profoundly important. I want to thank each of our guests for joining us today. We've got 3 students and one of our outstanding faculty members. Let's meet them now. Amber, let's begin with you. Welcome to the show today, Amber.
Hi, Dr. Anderson. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time to join. You are a senior psychology major here at
I
PennWest
am.
Edinboro, right?
Yes, yes.
You are also the president of the Psychology Club. Congratulations for that appointment.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you've been part of the Leadership Academy. You've been honing your skills, preparing for this career. So welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brock Young, who is a junior psychology major at the PennWest California campus. Welcome, Brock.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you inviting me on here.
Yes, thank you for taking time to join us. And you serve on the Psychology Student Advisory Board as a mentor and a peer, and are one of our tour guides for admissions and an ambassador for the institution. You're also a member of Psy-Chi and the National Society for Leadership and Success, and you have a long resume of lots of exciting things like hiking, longboarding, and spending time with friends. Thanks for joining us, Brock.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Our third student, Joshua Rathburn. Joshua, you're a freshman, also on the PennWest Cal campus, and you plan to become a counselor and a therapist at some point. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Great. You're also involved in the New Life Cal Catholic organization,
Yes, sir.
and also enjoy a lot of outdoor things and cooking. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Anderson. I appreciate it.
And Dr. McLaughlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you. I'm excited.
We're all learning from you as the expert in the room. You focus on psychology and neuroscience. I've done a lot with undergraduate research and pharmacology, as I understand it.
Yeah, so I have my research lab, and I've run it here on the Edinboro campus this is my 20th year here, and I have lots of success over the years with students going on to doctoral programs. And I'm lucky to be working with great students like Amber, for instance. So yeah, that's an exciting thing that we have here, is the ability to have students get started on some real world research as undergraduates.
That's excellent. Let's begin today's conversation by talking about psychology, neuroscience, pharmacology. Those are big terms a lot of people may not be familiar with. Dr. McLaughlin, will you help us out with those definitions? What is psychology? What is pharmacology? Give us a breadth of what the field looks like.
Absolutely. So our program here is the Department of Psychology, Counseling, and Art Therapy. But in psychology, it's basically the scientific study of behavior, very broadly defined. So anything related to how people act, think, feel, that's all under the area of psychology. It's actually, as we divide these things up, it's considered a hub field because it bumps up against so many other disciplines. So that's psychology. And of course, that can be those who want to be counselors to those who want to be essentially bench scientists and study the brain. Pharmacology is the study, well, broadly defined, is the study of not just, it sounds like drugs. It's not just that, it's chemical interactions within the body. And when we put them together into psychopharmacology or behavioral pharmacology, we're talking about the study of how brain chemicals create psychology in a sense, the things we think and feel and perceive.
Excellent. Thank you for that broad overview of the field. I've had a chance to talk to many, many students, and I always find it fascinating to hear how they became to be interested in and study their major. And so let's hear from each of our students. Amber, let's start with you. You are the most senior of the group. Tell us, at what point in your life did you decide psychology and the human brain are going to be my area of passion and interest?
Oh man. Well, I'll be honest, I've always had this question. I've always wondered, why do you act like that? Throughout high school and everything like that. It's just always been a question in my mind. And when I first got to college, I actually had no interest in psych whatsoever. I took the intro class and basically just fell in love. I found my answer of why people act like that, and I've learned to transform that answer into what happened to you. What's going on with you? What are the physical reactions going on in your brain and your body and stuff like that? So I think just taking the physical aspect, that's mostly why I work with McLaughlin, because I like to see how these neurotransmitters actually make us act and how they can, we're working on attention right now. So like how it can help our attention and hurt our attention, not ours. We have our rats, but. But yeah, it's just always been that question. And I'm from Fort LaBeouf. I'm from around here. So Edinboro was just always my top school because it's close to home. And I've heard great things about Edinboro. And yeah, I've just always had that question of why do you act like that? So, which is, it's almost what happened to you.
That's great. Thanks, Amber. Brock, let's go to you next. You are a junior, so you're getting close to the end of the program, well into your major classes. At what point in your life did you decide psychology was your area to study?
So back probably in high school around ninth or 10th grade, I actually wasn't considering psychology at all. Like around that time is when I started thinking like, what do I do after high school? Like I gotta like do something, college, work, anything. And I actually wanted to be a video game programmer. I was really into video games. I had a friend who did video game art. And we tried to work on some stuff together, but I found out that coding is pretty hard. And I decided to eventually drop that. And then it was like probably for between, yeah, like my sophomore year of high school, I was kind of just thinking of like, what do I like to do? I really take that saying of like, if I can do it without being paid, I'd still do it. I was really trying to think of an area where I can fit in that. And it sounds cheesy, but all throughout, my high school years, middle school, all that, I've always been like the person of like reference to talk to about when it like it's specifically like emotional issues or like relationship problems, stuff like that. And I've always loved doing that. And people have always said like I've made them feel better by doing that. So that's kind of just where I was like, I love doing it. It seems like I'm good at it. So, I would love to continue working for it. And then I came to PennWest, California, because I only live about 25 minutes away. So it's always been here my entire life. And I came here during a tour and I met a tour guide who's doing the exact same psychology degree I wanted to do. She got me the inside of it. I met all the faculty, some students. I met Dr. Hackett, I believe that day, which was awesome. He showed me a lot of, insight to the program. Yeah, and then it turned into just wanting to do general psychology. And now I want to do, hopefully, going to be starting the accelerated program in my clinical mental health counseling. I'm going to hopefully be trying to start that up soon. So, yeah, it's been a ride, but it's been awesome. I've loved it every step of the way for sure.
That is quite a path. And it's impressive to me that you are self-aware enough as a high school student to know that you had that strength of being a compassionate listener. A lot of people aren't self-aware like that. And for you to be able to recognize that and know that it's a strength, know that it's something you can do for a long time and enjoy it. So congratulations on finding that passion and that career path.
Very much
Joshua,
so.
let's go to you next. You're just starting out your program, a freshman here on campus. Tell us what prompted your interest in psychology.
Personally, what first sparked my interest in psychology was the way that people around me reacted. Personally, whether it was friends, family, or other people that I knew, I was always fascinated by how many responses any one person could offer, like, let alone a whole bunch of people. And I wanted to understand why those responses were given. So, like growing up, you hear affirmations of compassion or empathy, like you don't know what someone else is going through or has gone through. And, subtly you're introduced to like concepts of inferencing. You also witness, behavior, words, and actions of other people, and it almost contradicts those affirmations. And then you start noticing yourself contradicting them as well. That's where I had caught myself, and I was like, hey, what is this? And I would eventually come to know it as psychology. So within that time, you learn like you can't control other people, you can influence them, nor can they really control you, but they can influence you. So you become familiarized with the inner workings of your own mind and how understanding it actually helps you relate to other people. So for me, the groundwork for an interest in psychology and the way I understand it currently as I'm learning was there the whole time. I mean, the moment that I could say is really defining for me as I was learning about it. There was a class in high school, they're referring to this as Psych 101, I think. And I remember we were going over the terms. I absolutely loved it. And beyond that class, I only ever took one class. I took that in sociology. But beyond that one class, it was always stuck in the back of my brain. Eventually, I would go on to begin a degree in business administration, which I quickly found out was not for me. And I had a crossroads there, and I was like, what am I interested in? I briefly took the psychology Bachelor of Arts program at Penn State Fayette. And unfortunately, they were shutting down, but I discovered the psychology program that was here, and it furthered my interests. So the entire time, I've just been absolutely hooked.
That's great. It's so fun to hear all of you at an early age at least had that peak of your interest. And maybe I want to understand why people make decisions, how they react to different situations, and maybe influence that a little bit. Dr. McLaughlin, let's not let you off the hook. Let's take you back a few decades. At what point in your life did you say, this is going to be the place that I'm going to make a difference in the world?
Well, it's not that many decades, but yeah. So I was a first generation student, and being the first person in my family to not just go to college, but to be able to say, I want to study something and understand things and have that be my job, my career. I thought it was important to think big. And so trying to understand a very broad field. And I picked psychology because psychology kind of is everything, at least as I see it. So understanding people means understanding, in my field, how best to educate people, how to run organizations, understanding, for instance, how we persuade each other when we talk and come to decisions and understandings on the social and political realm. So there's a story for psychology in pretty much everything. Not to mention, of course, the great work that a lot of these kids are going to end up doing in mental health. So I went to college to study psychology for that reason. And this was, again, it was a few decades ago. So there were different perspectives on this school of thought sees people like this, and Freudian see people like that. And as a student, my feeling was, well, if I really want to help people and I really want to understand well everything about the human experience, figure it out, come up with something that everyone can agree on rather than all of these different perspectives. This was sort of my naive 18-year-old thinking that I could just study the brain because the brain is tangible and we'll get all those answers and everything will be nice and simple. So that did start my interest in the brain as something that's kind of literally tangible in psychology, but it's not that simple. It's been, again, many, many years of doing research to understand this relationship between the biology and chemistry inside our heads and how that sort of creates and is responsible for everything about who we are. It's been some fun questions. It's even led to areas of research as far as how people sometimes misunderstand the relationship between the brain and behavior. But it's been this complicated story and it's been a great ride.
That's excellent. Now tell us a little bit, one of the key pieces, key strategies of PennWest is this idea of applied learning. The students don't just come here, take multiple choice tests, and that's it. That they have experiences outside the classroom, inside the classroom, that help them learn exactly what they're going to be doing when they're done. And one of those, and a good example of that is your lab. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that got started and what you do in the lab?
Well, I always wanted to continue to train students in research and psychology, just like I was trained. And so several of us have research labs, and the basic MO of these labs is very similar to what a doctoral program would be like, where you have a group of like-minded students, you get together, we have projects, areas of interest, and the students help with running of that. It's like the old timey, they used to see a lot more in a lot of fields, the old timey like apprentice relationship with a mentor, where you're building a skill set by doing while you become more independent over time. And in fact, when my students then, not all of them apply to PhD programs, not all of them have that interest, but those who do are told by mentors, wow, you already are on the level of like a second or third year PhD student because of the experiences you had as an undergraduate at PennWest.
That's excellent. And Amber, you've had a chance to work in that lab. I'd like to hear from each of our students. As you have progressed through the program, and I know Josh, you're just getting started, what are the applied experiences you've had? Something you've read in a textbook and then you get a chance to apply it, whether it's a case study in a class, working in a lab. Amber, talk to us about your experience working in the lab or other applied experiences you've had.
Yeah, so definitely working in the lab has helped me understand a lot more than just what the classroom can teach me. Dr. McLaughlin is such a great, advisor and, everything mentor, all of that. He really goes in and explains what's going on, what exactly we're studying, and he always leaves no rock unturned. He's always on top of everything, always has it, and kind of just being someone that you should look up to in a sense, like being that person. So it's been nice to gain that relationship and gain that knowledge and everything like that. I've actually I've taken what I've learned in psychology and I'm actually putting together a panel in November. It's going to be like a trauma-informed care panel, and we have like a police officer coming. We have Dr. Dixon from PennWest here. She's also coming, a licensed social worker and stuff like that. So I really just like to take what I've learned and kind of educate other people about it. And that's what the psychology club and the research has been able to let me do at conferences and stuff like that. So it's really been awesome. I love it so, so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Amber. Brock, what have been your applied learning experiences as you've worked your way through the program?
I would definitely say for like academically applied, I was able to create research and present it. I believe it's called the Western Undergraduate Psychology Conference. They came here last semester and I was able to present my own research as well as be a head author of a 6 student research project, as well as Dr. Hackett was on that project as well. So I was able to, apply like research psychology as well as just thinking of the psychological variables, like thinking exactly like how do I test this? So yeah, I was able to do all that research with Dr. Hack as well as the other students and present those, but stuff that is more like in general of psychology that I've applied, especially like for like my therapy classes, like and stuff I've learned that just like how people think and like how what I'm saying or what I'm doing can subconsciously or consciously change how like they're interacting with me or how they're going to be. So taking that into consideration when I'm interacting with people, like looking for, you know, like maybe I say something and I notice like just a small like take in like how they like talk to me after that. Like I notice like they're interested in it, or maybe something they're uncomfortable with. Like I can look at that and try to apply it into how I conversate with people as well as groups, just to make it an overall better experience, I think. And then also, just similar to what Amber was saying, I am also the president of the Psychology Club, and I've been able to present, like, you have to like put out events and stuff, like just like mindfulness events, just how to relax, like learning mindfulness techniques, as well as having different professors and speakers come on. Like we had Frank Bolani, who's just our campus counselor on campus. We have annually, we bring him in and he gives a QPR gatekeeping training, which is suicide prevention. So it's like a 2-year certificate. You learn about suicide, you learn about the signs of it, And then, of course, when you learn that, you learn how to apply it whenever you're interacting with anyone, that you're interacting with in your day-to-day life. Yeah, I mean, there's really everything, honestly. I apply psychology. The more and more that I've learned about it, the more and more I've learned about people as well as my own self, it's always going to be applied. Because, I mean, it's just who we are. So, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brock. Joshua, I don't know if you've had the chance to get much into the applied area yet. If you have, please share that. Or if not, please share the hopes and aspirations you have for your next nearly 3.5 years as you finish your psychology degree here at PennWest.
Thank you. And you would be correct. I don't have very much experience just yet. At the moment, I think where I would like to go with the next 3.5 years or so that I will have in the program here is going to be related to what I'm learning with, I believe it's in theories of psychotherapy with Dr. Timbo. Some of the experiences I have had in class with her have actually been experiential. So she brings somebody in, we have an identified patient, we begin talking about, okay, what does this look like? How do we interact with this person? I'm able to interact with my classmates. We're able to discuss how theories apply to the specific person that we're interviewing or we're dealing with at that moment. And I really want to take a concept like that and I want to apply that to my learning. I want to be able to go outside of the classroom here. I want to be able to talk with others about the kinds of theories. I remember Dr. Timbo had mentioned that typically you as a counselor or therapist, you are going to sort of shop for your approach when you're dealing with someone out of all the theories, out of all the things that you learn, and you're going to learn, as Brock said, what makes them comfortable. What is their tick? What are they interested in? What are they uncomfortable with? What are they not interested in? And then being able to apply that with someone else and taking that in a route that benefits them. Whenever someone comes into therapy, typically you're expecting them to be a participant in their own care. But another aspect of that is not only are you a participant in your own care, how can I, as someone who is interacting with you as your therapist or counselor, inside of this room and outside of this room, posture myself so that I can best help you? I feel like a lot of times, whenever, like where my passion personally is when you interact with someone. I see this a lot with people who are very close to me, whether it's a family or a friend. Some people might say, like Brock had said, I need to find something to do after high school. Maybe they get into a nursing program. Maybe they want to become a doctor. They want to do something, but often their justification is, I need to do something. And usually it leads to a lot of disappointment for them, I feel. But that disappointment doesn't just affect them later down the line, that's affecting other people. And I want to take the passion from that and I want to be like, hey, I'm really interested in doing this. I want this to be what I'm doing inside of the classroom. I want this to be what I'm doing outside of the classroom, as well as in an office with somebody and outside of an office with somebody. Because when I do that, I'm learning. I believe Dr. Timbo had also mentioned just the other day that, sometimes people have a misconception that because you are a professional, you're expected to be an expert. You're no longer learning. And it's not quite that. Learning is a continual process. You're not going to stop it. So where I want to apply that is, okay, how can I do that outside of this moment? How am I best applying this to you? And, what does that look like? Where can I go out in the community and gather experience where I can show that to you? How can my interactions with other people appropriately, of course, influence my life, but also how your life is going to be. And that's sort of the direction I wanted to take it.
Excellent. It'll be fun to see over the few years those experiences that you have. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a number of reasons, and I want to go kind of down a rabbit hole for just a minute with the four of you. I'm very interested in this question for a lot of reasons, including a lot of what's happening at PennWest. If you look at what happens to the mind, if you go back a few decades when I was a teenager, which I think was like yesterday, but you probably look at me thinking that had to be like 50 years ago. But if you go back to the time when I was a teenager, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no smartphone. The best technology we had to communicate was through a fax machine and a telephone line. I still remember the first time I made a phone call out of a car, and it was a huge phone with a big antenna on top of the car. And when we talk about mental health, mental illness, access to information, what drives behavior, we had so little access to information that was really the kind of the point in which we couldn't make progress. You had to seek out information, go look up encyclopedias, go to the Dewey Decimal System in the library, That's how you had to learn. And that led to one way of thinking and developing, one way for your brain to grow. You fast forward a few decades to where we are now, it's almost the opposite problem. And that is we have way too much information. We're flooded with information all the time. If you look at just the information you can gather in 30 minutes on TikTok or Instagram, it's a world of information we didn't have access to decades ago. And you accompany that with what's happening with AI and robotics and the real shifts that are happening in economics, the future of jobs. It can cause people to be in a very different place mentally. It can cause different conversations about what mental health is, mental illness. It can cause different conversations about why people act the way that they do and how they make the cognitive decisions and subconscious decisions to go in a certain direction. I'm curious from your perspective, how do you think these changes in the information that's available in technology have influenced individual decision making and mental health and mental illness? Dr. McLaughlin, let's start. I hope that's not too much to cover. Maybe we have 4 hours to go while we figure this out, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, 4 hours is not enough to get started. There's so many things in that, right? And that's why I volunteered to be part of the Center for AI and Emerging Technologies because I want to help understand this, and I also want to try and understand where it's all going as far as what's the job market going to be in 10, 20 years when the rest of these guys on our panel are mid-career. Yeah, there's so much starting with mental health. I mean, I think that what I try and get people to do is, particularly in my critical thinking class, is, let's remember correlation doesn't imply causation. Let's remember, for instance, that there are studies coming out that are some of which will say, here's something good that can happen with new technology with social media. Others are seem very catastrophic. It's important to understand that not one of these studies really answers the question, and you kind of have to take the totality of it. So if you do that, and again, understanding that what we would really like is properly controlled experiments, and there's just not that many. So it's hard to know right now not only what's the impact of the social media we've had over the last, let's say, 10 years, but where are we going? Some of the scary stories, for instance, about people mistaking AI chatbots for real human communication. I do think there's a role for, I use chatbots all the time to help think through problems and brainstorm and give me examples for things. So I think it can be very helpful, useful. I think it can be a really good thing. I think there are also a lot of these downsides. Talking about one of the things that I wanted to follow up in talking about the research lab is to make it clear that not every psychology student or student in general is going to be working in research, but among those who do, one of the things that I think is going to be important in terms of employable skills that I as best as I can foresee as fairly durable in years going forward is what in psychology we call transfer across domains. In other words, the ability to take something that you've learned or a problem solving skill or some other type of skill you've picked up and identify where it pops up in a lot of different places in life. So that's why it's really good to have these not just classroom experiences, but these outside of the classroom things. So, my students have been able to say, just by working in the lab, not all of them want to be neuroscientists. A lot of them want to go on into a wide range of different fields. A lot of them are in clinical psych programs, and they're able to talk about, I work really well as a team with the other students in the lab. I've been able to problem solve on the fly. I've picked up everything from, basic animal care to fixing equipment problems when they come up to writing something with another person to just, all of the things that go into a research plan like that, carrying it out, successfully presenting it, are a lot of things that I think are going to put someone in charge of the technology rather than the other way around. That's what I'm really worried about is situations where people have the technology doing the answers for them. Our term for this is cognitive offloading. And that's another major issue to talk about when we get to new trends and technologies is people who allow the technology to run things for them instead of being the decision maker, being attentive, looking at the output of whatever technology you're using and saying, this is good, this is bad, I need to edit this. So, you being the person in charge, those are the kinds of skills that I think are going to be durable and just flat out healthy in young people going forward. And so that's why I'm trying to incorporate that both in the classroom and in research as much as possible.
Excellent. Thank you. It is so interesting to me that this cognitive offloading that you talked about, that
Right.
is a serious problem. So if you have a student that can throw in a bunch of data into a statistical model and they have it spits out an R square or some coefficient, you have no idea how it's calculated. You can really
Right.
misinterpret things very quickly. And that's one of the challenges I see with a lot of the tools that are available is we can get answers as fast as possible, but often we don't know enough to know what those answers mean
Right.
and we make faulty judgments. So, Amber, talk to me a little about how this shift in technology and information sharing you believe influences what we know about psychology and human decision making.
Yeah, so I really want to talk about the mental health aspect of it. I think social media has been detrimental to everyone's mental health. There's a lot of upward comparison, downward comparison, it's very scary, and there's a lot of people out there spreading misinformation and stuff like that. And I don't know if you guys have seen the new Sora 2 AI videos, and just they were so realistic. And I think a major part of almost, I don't want to say like saving humanity in a sense, is just making sure that we're critical, free thinkers and making sure that we are educated and we are looking at literature and have the skills to kind of sort out the literature to see, what's actually real results, actual significant results, and what results are almost manufactured in a way to make it look significant. And so I think it's very important to be educated. It's very important to have that middle ground between gullible and skeptical. That's something we learn in social psychology, and just having that middle ground of, not being too gullible, not being overly critical, but just also just using critical thinking skills. That's like a main part of it. But yeah, it's very scary, and I really hope people realize that we are humans and we are not, social media, robots. We aren't made to scroll all day. We aren't made to participate in this cognitive offloading that McLaughlin talked about. Like, it's very scary. And yeah, we just need to realize that we're humans. We need social interaction. We need to go outside. We need to have activity. We need to do stuff like that. So, yeah, I hope that people realize that and it gets a little bit better.
Thank you, Amber. Brock, what are your thoughts?
Kind of Amber talked a lot of what I was going to be discussing when it comes to like the social. I'll talk about specifically about social media. I think there is a beneficial part to it because it wouldn't be here if it wasn't beneficial. It's supposed to, keep us all intertwined to each other, like know, like, oh, what's going on, like keep in touch. And but it should be to that level. Like now we're getting into where Amber was saying, now we're getting into misinformation as well as disinformation, which is even worse. It's like purposely telling the wrong thing. And when we are on these social media sites, especially with scrolling has been like the biggest thing because it's constant like dopamine hits. It like instantly. It's you get like it's to the point of like sometimes like I've even realized it's hard for me to watch like long form content because I'm just like it just feels like like word vomit at some points. It's just like, oh, we're just filling up space. But that's the thing is like that's how it's supposed to be. I shouldn't have to be like I need to like scroll. I need to see this new stimuli to uh excite my brain, excite my perception, or whatever it may be. And for the information side, I think AI is a very beneficial tool, but I think that the way that I've seen a lot of people utilize this tool is going to how we were saying it's good that cognitive unloading as well as just the critical, like robbing us of our critical thinking skills. Like for example, as Dr. McLaughlin had said, like if I'm like, like I'm writing a paper or something, and I'm just like, I know I want to figure out like how I'm going to write it, like intro, body paragraph, like stuff like that. And it can give me like an outline of how I would like write it. That's beneficial, but I'm still doing it. I'm still writing I'm still writing the content of it. I'm still figuring out what to put together to make this full paper. That was just like not even 5% of help. That's just to get me started. Everything else is me. And I feel that's what we're losing is that we're relying on it too much. We're not utilizing it as a tool. We're utilizing it as a built-in feature. Like I don't really know how to like describe it. It's just like it's a built-in answer machine essentially. That's what it's being looked at. It's not being looked at as a utilization of a tool to help us for that small. Like for Quizlet, like for example, I had like a whole Word document of all the stuff I had to study, and I was able to just scan all that, put it in Quizlet, and then an AI chatbot made it all into slides for me, which just saved time. Like instead of me having to type in the definition and determine all that, it did that for me. So now I have more time to study more class, or I have time to now work on other assignments. So when it's utilized in that way, I think it's very beneficial. But unfortunately, with the way we have seen it, and also like the Sora too, like it is very that's popped up. I don't know, like at least 2 weeks ago, I've seen. Yeah, it's also robbing our critical thinking skills. So you can see stuff on there. Like there's been multiple times, like especially with Sora too, that I've seen it. I'm like, that's crazy. But then I have to sit and be like, that's crazy. So is it real? Like I have to like I have to think about that now, and
Yeah.
it kind of I feel like it kind of makes us more like untrustworthy in general, especially if it's going to be about like media sources or mass media, in that sense. And yeah, we just can't like how we transferred from paper, like everything being paper to internet. That was a whole thing of being like, oh, we can't rely on the internet; it can go down anything. But the thing is that we're still using it. With like internet is internet, but without us updating it, without us, manipulating it to do what we want, it can't do anything. But with AI, it can do all of that. It can give you all the information, give you the structure, and just do it completely for you, which sounds awesome. It does. Like, how would we not want something to be able to like do these tasks for us? But in doing that, we are losing the humanitarian part of it. Like we're losing like our humanity, I think, when we are relying on it to that extent. So I think, yeah, it's just we got to understand that not everything that we see is like real. Make sure to check, but you don't have, and how Amber was saying, don't be overcritical. I'm not expecting you to see something and then you research it like hours and hours and hours, but just be considerate of what you're seeing, put into context. If it sounds crazy, maybe do a little bit of research into it. If you feel very strongly towards it, maybe do a little bit more research into it before you come out and make those decisions or base your decisions on this what other people are saying or what the AI bot is telling you to say as well. So yeah, I think it's very beneficial if we use it the way that we originally were discussing it as a tool and not just a answer machine. Yeah.
I think that's really well spoken, Brock. And I think that's a challenge to us as a university, to our faculty, to our staff, to all of us, because we are about training the mind to think and the soul to feel. That's what we do. And so that when people get out, they have a human element and a capability to think through very challenging problems. And we've got to make sure in our teaching that we're not just training people on tools, but training people how to think, to use tools effectively to drive outcomes. So that the way you described it was spot on. Joshua, any other thoughts to add to this piece?
I want to say I have to agree with Brock and what he was talking about. I believe he was referencing AI as more of a substitute for our learning than something that is supposed to augment our learning. And I have to agree with that because I know a lot of people who use AI and use tools similar to AI. And when they use tools similar to AI, they typically use it in such a way that they are no longer engaging with the material that they're presented with. I know a lot of times people think about a degree anymore. Usually refer to it as like an educational inflation. Like a degree is something that you use to get a job, and it becomes less about you becoming more informed as a person, you becoming more capable of discernment as a person. And I think that's a little bit of a problem because when people start thinking like that, I mean, at what point has education completely lost its purpose? At what point are we no longer benefiting the people around us? And that's a really big problem. I usually like to think of the term use it or lose it. especially whether that comes to exercise or, your mind. And that's one of those things that I feel like we will eventually lose if we're not careful about it. Like if we continue to use AI in our learning as something that is almost suspending us, at what point will we no longer be able to, I'll say metaphorically, walk, you know? And it affects everything. It's going to affect your family, it's going to affect your friends, and more importantly, it's going to affect you. And when it affects you, there's consequences for that. And, like Amber was saying, that's the scary part.
Yeah. This has been such an interesting tangent. I'm glad we went down it because this is the real application of psychological learning, critical thinking right now. And that is, we have a massive flood of information. How do we process what is real, what is useful? How do we, as a university, how do we train students and our faculty, staff, all of us, administrators? How do we become trained to use the mind effectively by applying the tools that are available to make a difference for good? And that is a question that I think about all the time, and I think that's before all of us. This has been such a fun conversation. Before we prepare to wrap, let's just go quickly to each of you and have you look 10 years down the road. We've got a lot of questions we're working on right now. The rapid pace of AI and technological information sharing, all those things has drastically changed, and it's changing every week now as new tools come out, and it's changing the impact on our own mental development. So I'm curious, let's look a decade down the road. Just quickly, each of you, what do you think you'll be doing for a profession? And what research questions will you be asking? Because it'll be very different than what we're looking at right now. Dr. McLaughlin, let's start with you.
Oh, wow. Well, in a decade down the road, I would like to continue looking at some of the things that we just talked about, which is what are some common cognitive biases that are easy to play on in media and by I don't know who else. And what are some of the things that we can do? And a lot of times these are sort of age-old tactics. So, talking about whether it's a video that's been constructed from whole cloth, or I was just thinking of years and years ago, there would be, and you still see this online a lot. I think it started in like talk shows. It would be somebody asking, let's say, geography questions to like, let's look at the stupid Americans or the stupid young people or whatever, getting those questions wrong. What I tell people to do is start with a little intellectual humility, understand, for instance, how it makes you feel and whether that's I'm scared now, I'm outraged, I have this feeling of Schadenfreude, like I'm so much smarter than these idiots I'm looking at right now. And then turning that into what am I not seeing here and what am I not considering? So, for instance, are they going to show you the boring ones where everybody got the answer right? No, they're only going to selectively show you where people look dumb. So you can apply a lot of those same skills to technology that's going to come out in a few years. So, and what we have today. So I think where a lot more research is going to head is how do we equip ourselves with these skills so that way, come what may, we'll be healthy, we'll do the best we can to figure out what's real from what's false. And like I said, what my big concern for these kids is, are you going to be employable a few years from now? And so, as much as possible, what are the skills that everyone is going to need to have that fulfilling life going forward?
Excellent. Thank you. Josh, let's go to you next. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are you going to be doing? What questions are you going to be asking?
Personally, I believe that my habits that I'm starting now and the questions that I'm asking now is going to be the same thing that I'm going to be doing in 10 years. I thoroughly believe that whether it's, you're journaling now or you're exercising now or you're interacting with people now, that's going to shape what you're doing because we're creatures of habit. But when it comes to the next 10 years and the question I'm going to be asking, I think my main one is going to be relative to this conversation, how is AI affecting people How is it affecting their relationships? How is it affecting the way that they think? And how does that affect the things around them? How does that impact their ability to be pro-social? How is that impacting the quality of their work, especially? I know when I think about AI, as we were just talking about substitution of information as opposed to augmenting it, when you're substituting information, you very quickly lose understanding. You may see an answer as a screen on a screen, as we were talking about before, like with systems, with algorithms, but you're not going to understand why you have that. And that's a really core part is like self-reflection, especially like when you can no longer identify, catalog, or even recognize your own feelings, what kind of impact is that going to have? You know, what kind of impact does that have on your profession and not just on your profession then, because the world is very interconnected. How's that impacting the person next to you? Whether it's, at your job, in your family, how they impact the next person next to them. It's almost like a domino effect.
It is for sure. Thank you. And I look forward to you answering those questions and learning about it a decade from now. Brock, let's go to you next. What does the next 10 years look like for you?
So for the next 10 years, I would really, really hope that I am a clinical mental health counselor and that I am, steady, have a house, doing all that good stuff, living that career. But for research questions, there's tons. I mean, it's in psychology, and in 10 years, so much can change. But the biggest thing, and like it kind of made me think while we were discussing it, is AI. We've had AI for like a couple years now, like, from like very basic to now, like how we're saying Sora 2. 10 years, there's like, I think of it, there is a generation being born within this time frame. Like they are going to grow up with only AI. Like there is someone being born today and they're beginning AI as Sora 2 to where like how we're looking, like I'm looking at you guys right now, this could be AI. Like it's that realistic. Um, so it's going to be super interesting to possibly research cognitively how this newer generation is coming up and how that can be translated to other things. How I was saying distrust. I wonder if this would make a more possible pessimistic like outlook in some like groups of people because it's like, oh, I can't tell. Or maybe we'll get to a point of where AI is like not maybe not regulated, but in a way to where it's not like used in ways of misinformation and disinformation. But it's going to be really hard to do that because anyone can utilize these tools and anyone can do it. Yeah, so I would definitely like to look at AI, um, as well as probably just like the interactions between people and groups. I feel like especially now, like recently, there's a lot of people that feel very polarized
Yeah.
from each other and feel very distant. And I feel that, and like, and the big thing is like, oh, if you don't agree with me, then you're gone. But the thing is, I feel that to get to an understanding, to get to a conclusion, we have to have those discussions. Like we can't just be like, go over there, I go over there. We have to have these together. And I think a big thing of that is if people like look at it from the perspective of like my reality of how I'm thinking is just as strong as how you may be thinking about your other things. So like I may think like, and it kind of Dr. McLaughlin was kind of hinting to it. It can be like something like I think might be like dumb, or I might think like it doesn't make sense or anything like that. But by understanding that that is their reality, like that is their truth, like, and to take that into consideration while I'm discussing with them. So like they might be something like, oh, you're just concerned about like your family. That's what you are truly concerned about. So we can appeal to that. We can discuss it and try to find where pretty much we both agree, like we want the same thing, but we have to discuss it to get to that conclusion. So I wonder again, maybe if like how research will be, or just general like of that type of culture would be in general within the next 10 years.
Excellent. Thanks, Brock. And Amber, let's wrap with you. Where are you going to be in 10 years and what questions you'll be asking?
So I feel like just being like our fields being like social services, we're going to be very important in the next 10 years with this almost takeover of AI. We're going to be, the humans to come and interact and explain things to you. And, I think the research question, we're already asking, how social media affects us, how AI is affecting us. I think in 10 years, it's going to be, this is how it affects us. How can we fix it? How can we reverse it? How can we make it better? And it's been about 10 years, longer than 10 years for social media, but we're already starting to find results in research of how social media affects us, what it does to our brain, physically. And yeah, so the research question isn't going to be how it affects us anymore. It's going to be how we can fix this and make people feel better and stop relying on, cognitive offloading. I really like that cognitive offloading. I didn't know about that until today. So after learning about that, yeah, that's really what's happening now. And that's going to be the new question. I can see it now.
Thank you, Amber. Well, this has been such an interesting conversation about the life of the mind, about how your minds are being shaped as you grow through the program, Dr. McLaughlin, the training that you provide for students. And thank you for being part of PennWest. Thank you for taking time to join the Power of PennWest podcast today and giving us insights about what you think the future of mind and mental work will be. So thanks to each of you. Amber, Josh, Dr. McLaughlin, Brock, thanks. Enjoyed the conversation.
Same. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anderson.